I'm here today to tell you about Cardis and how we're mapping the nonprofit sector with the help of its volunteers. In December of 2011, I went to Uganda, and we did a ton of good. We helped nearly 200 children overcome acute malnutrition. But for every patient we cured, we realized that there were over 100 issues afflicting them at home. One of the most chronic was actually a lack of water sanitation. So what did we do? As any passionate NGO, we decided that we were going to help them provide this solution. So I went online and looked, naively expecting to find a map of nonprofit service to easily find the expert next door. But after about 3 hours of searching, I discovered that this wasn't readily available, even though there were experts within 20 kilometers of us. So as I went home and began to ruminate upon this, I realized that this was a much bigger issue that didn't afflict only me. Not only did it affect other members of my team, Brent and Andrew, in Argentina and Russia, but more importantly, when we surveyed volunteers, we realized that 68% couldn't find the right nonprofit within their area. So, why is this such a big issue? Why is it important for the nonprofit sector to be able to seamlessly connect one another and really act more efficiently? Well, the fact of the matter is the nonprofit sector fills holes where the public and private sector cannot. And so it also makes up 12% of the United States GDP. That's $779 billion going towards the people who need services each and every year. They simply don't have the luxury to act with this inefficiency. So as we were looking at the map, wondering if this is the right solution, we realized it really is. Because this lack of collaboration that I saw is a much bigger systemic problem. Amongst the 1.7 million nonprofits within the United States, less than 1% reported having collaborated in the past year. So sure, this map might not force them in order to properly collaborate. But at the end of the day, it'll show us what services are being offered, what redundancies are actually occurring within the sector, and where complementary services, like I and the guy doing water sanitation, could actually collaborate and work together. So, map is simple, easy, elegant. Why hasn't it been done before? Well, the fact of the matter is it has been tried before, but it's really lacked user engagement. The reason that user engagement is so key is because without user engagement, you don't have a real-time map, nor is it comprehensive. So I'm not going to go there for regular updates, and I'm not able to find the right guy to solve the problem for the population that I am so desperately trying to help. And because of this, nobody utilizes these maps, and they don't provide the solution that they aim to do initially. So how is Cardis different? We're not different in the solution. We're providing a map just the same. But what we're really doing is in our targeted plan of action. That is how we differentiate ourselves. Other maps have classically targeted the nonprofit. This is problematic for two key reasons. First off, nonprofits typically aren't extremely tech savvy. But more importantly, nonprofits are doing so much good in the world that they don't actually have the time to input their data onto a website unless there's an immediate value for them. So we started asking bigger fundamental questions. Who knows enough about the nonprofit and can actually populate this map in order to get the answers that we wanted, but at the same time wanted to have the same kind of social impact that we desired? And we realized that the answer was actually young, tech-savvy volunteers. And the way that Cardis is initially targeting these are through bottoms-up and top-down approaches. In areas with high concentrations of volunteers, we're initially targeting schools such as Harvard, Yale, and Stanford, where we have strong network connections to show the value inherent for the volunteer and really try to get this caught on in an organic manner. But we're also looking at top-down approaches in tandem. So you can have large organizations such as Peace Corps, AmeriCorps, and Points of Light, who right now need a platform in order to aggregate their volunteer experiences, but currently lack the tools to do it. Cardis will provide that platform. So why are young millennials the right people to target? Well, the fact is that millennials use the internet every day to live. We have the highest population with smartphones. We log on to Facebook nearly every morning, and we use all of these social networking sites. Getting people to jump to a site like this, if you provide the right value, is much easier to do within a millennial population than these older populations within nonprofits. So how does our product actually work? So really, the volunteer fills out a profile, which is aggregated onto an interactive map. The individual maps their volunteer experience with the personal, so their Facebook profile, their name, their current school, their occupation. Then you move on to context. What nonprofit organization did they work at? Who did they work with? When did they work? What projects did they work at? And what needs were they actually meeting? And finally, all this gets tagged with geolocation and organization, so ultimately we have an interactive map of nonprofits. So if I input my individual volunteer experience and the guy doing water sanitations inputs his experience, then what do we have? We have the ability to seamlessly connect with one another, and I can find the expert I so desperately need to help the population I'm so passionate about helping.
So how can we incentivize users to upload their information to Cardis? We provide 2 key value points that have never been effectively introduced in the nonprofit context before. First, we provide volunteers with a geospatial resume. They can upload photos, videos, blogs, anything that they deem pertinent to their volunteer experience that they want to share with the folks back home or with their peers in the volunteer world. Secondly, we'll be able to predict where they can work next and where their skills as volunteers will provide the most value. This has proven in our surveys to be a huge incentive for volunteers, 85% of whom say that they will input data into Cardis if it predicts good volunteer opportunities. So say you live in Boston. You worked in Haiti. You had an internship at Mass General and you're 20 years old. You log on to Cardis for the first time, input your data, and Cardis recommends a fellow user. He's 22, worked in Haiti as well. He also had an internship at Mass General, but he worked on an AIDS research project that you had previously not known about. So Cardis, in this context, has the ability to take your information, compare it with other users, and provide opportunities that otherwise weren't available. What does this mean on the ground? Once all these users' information is aggregated on Cardis, users will be able to better connect all over the world and share their expertise and skills and resources. So let's take the example of Chris in Uganda. He worked for days trying to find a water sanitation expert who happened to just be a few miles down the road. With Cardis, he's only a few keystrokes away instead of a few days. We've developed a few key partnerships as well that will be critical to Cardis' growth in the future. Coaches Across Continents has agreed to be our first customer. It's an organization that works in 11 countries worldwide with 70 volunteers. And we've also had legitimate interest from the Peace Corps as well. So Cardis provides a solution to a chronic problem that doesn't only plague these two nonprofits, but it plagues the entire industry as a whole.
Our team has been brought together thanks to the Tech for Change community at the Harvard Kennedy School, and also at a hackathon co-produced by Harvard Developers for Development and the MIT Global Initiative. Uniquely, these groups brought us together around these very passionate ideas of creating a better picture of the nonprofit system and of creating a platform for volunteers to connect. Our core team is distributed across key disciplines. Chris Goldstein, a student at Harvard College, is responsible for tech and product design and has experience, as alluded to earlier, in Uganda. Andrew Cole is a student at NYU and is responsible for partnerships and marketing. He has experience interning at International Tribune and Vice, and also experience volunteering in Argentina. Josh Lebau is a student in computer science at Brown University and has expertise in scaling networks as well as Hive and behavior online understanding. He's responsible for the tech backend and is sort of the man behind the scenes driving the infrastructure innovation that we need. I am a dual degree master's candidate at Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth and the Harvard Kennedy School. Recently worked at Google and had co-founded 2 startups as well as started a nonprofit of my own focusing on Russian orphans. Collectively, we have 25 years of nonprofit experience, 12 years of technology experience, 2 tech startups and 2 nonprofit startups as well. Surrounding this team, we have a solid advisory board. Technically advising us is Dr. Chris Joshi, Vice President at Oracle for Global Health Services. Helping us understand the nonprofit perspective is Dr. Thomas Burke, Chief Division of Health and Human Services at Mass Gen Hospital. Helping us understand mapping and making sure we get kind of the technical aptitude as well as the visualization necessary to tell the story is Dr. Sumita Srinivasan, an expert in mapping at Harvard College, and Dr. Roy Ahn at Mass Gen Hospital is an expert in nonprofit collaboration. Additionally, we have two key technical and data collaborators in GuideStar, who have set the industry standard in nonprofit information, and the Foundation Center, who provide us with rich nonprofit collaboration information that we intend to mine and understand further. So how do we execute on this? Really, what's next? We've mapped out our roadmap of what we intend to do across 4 key phases. Phase 1, we recently addressed here in the spring, where we've generated mock-ups, acquired nonprofit data, built a database and visualized 1.7 million nonprofits across the US, as well as engaged in key strategic partnership discussions. Phase 2, this upcoming summer, we intend to launch the web app and pilot it with key strategy partners, such as Coaches for Continents, and continue our conversations with the Peace Corps. In Phase 3, we intend to continue to iterate and launch our beta, that being in the fall, with an ultimate vision of launching in Phase 4, which is 2014, to a broader audience. And we intend at that point to reach sustainability financially. For $135,000, we expect we could reach a successful full launch, and that's what we would need in finance capital in order to make this happen. We've also outlined additional key milestones as well as the people necessary to make this happen. So how are we going to monetize this? We've really devised two products, one primarily focused on the social entrepreneur and the nonprofit volunteer that we've alluded to earlier in our presentation, and providing them information globally, not just locally, but unlocking that information for a fee. We expect that 6.2 million of the 62 million would sort of fit our target profile. And if we go on a rough 1% conversion paid subscription rate, that we think we could generate from that base 3 million in revenue annually. Now the foundations, we think they need this rich information and believe that they deserve a curated, very custom experience. So we expect to convert or to target 12,000 of the 120,000 foundations that are out there at a conversion rate of roughly 2%, getting us to about 144,000 in revenue for that particular product that's specific for them, providing dashboards and analytics to help them manage their nonprofit portfolio of volunteers and organizations. Ultimately, our grand vision is to be the one-stop shop for grassroots social impact. We want to create that vibrant community of nonprofit volunteers. We want to be that living map of nonprofit activity that we believe is pivotal and contingent upon that community of volunteers. Ultimately, we don't want to stop there, however. We want to go beyond and incorporate needs as expressed by populations and enable them to communicate that via SMS, texting. We also want to incorporate CSR initiatives at businesses. We believe that that tri-sector public-private partnership collaboration is key to addressing the needs that we care most about. Ultimately, beyond all of this, my motivation for doing this is my experience in Russia. I think back to the orphan Losha that I met on the streets, and I can't help but think if I would have known and had access to a platform such as this, I could have helped him earlier. I could have helped him and his friends much more effectively. And that's what we're asking you to join us in doing and investing in such a technology platform so that ultimately we can get to the business we really care about doing and focusing on the people we're driven to serve.